Shalom, my friends. Shalom. Shalom from the holy city of Jerusalem. I'm trying to get into the Azamra online. Is there anybody who is watching this on YouTube that could possibly let me know through the YouTube chat if you're able to see me and hear me? You should be able to do that any minute now. For some reason, the website is not allowing me to get into Azamra online chat. So please do let me know if anybody is watching this on YouTube, or if you could go over to YouTube to watch the live stream, and let me know, please, if you can or you cannot see me and hear me. This is a bit frustrating over here that I'm not able to get into our own just please do let me know through the YouTube chat if you can see me and hear me. Waiting for some kind of response through YouTube. As of now, I'm not able to get into the Azamra online chat, but let's see if that will change sometime soon. So waiting excitedly to hear whether anybody's going to message me through the YouTube chat, which at this moment is now turned on. And if I am going to succeed in getting into the Azamra chat, I hope that if anybody else has succeeded in getting in, we'll be able to communicate over there. Is it or is it not going to work? Here we go. Oh, I do see here that Adonit, Catherine, Dale, Jake, and Robbie are all in here. And, well, that's good to know. I'm going to see if I can just get things worked out a little more efficiently. Shalom, my dear friends. I do see that you are logged in here on the chat. Robbie, thank you for letting me know that you can see and hear. And Adonit, Jake, if you can see me and hear me, that's fine. And I'm now in the online chat room. I don't exactly understand why I was not able to get in there before, but thank God I am with you now. And therefore, let me say shalom. It's good to be back here in Yerushalayim after some time away, having had, unfortunately, to suspend our study, which I did with very, very a great regret and very much not what I would wanted to do. But unfortunately, there was some family business that required the presence of myself and my wife in Tzfat, where I have been most of the time, just having returned yesterday. And thank God I'm back and hope to resume our studies pretty much from where we left off. So I thank God to be here, and here we are on at a very special time of the year. We are here right before Rosh Hashanah, which will be starting on Sunday night, October the 7th, which is just a week and a half away now. And here is the shofar all ready for Rosh Hashanah. Let's see if we can get some sound out of this. that should put us into the season with our consciousness heightened for the call of the shofar from the straits of our heart right up to the very heavens. And we shall be celebrating Rosh Hashanah in just 10 days' time. And already the communities of the Edot HaMizrach, the Sephardim, have begun the recital of the Slichot, the special supplicatory prayers, which the Sephardim, the Oriental communities, begin from the second day of the month of Elul, after the conclusion of Rosh Chodesh of Elul. And since today is the 18th of Elul, the Bnei Edot HaMizrach have now been saying their Slichot for 17 days, and they will be joined by the Ashkenazi communities, the Jews of Europe, Russia, Poland, Central, Western Europe, and many of the communities of the Americas and elsewhere in the world. The Ashkenazim will be rising for the Slichot this coming Sunday, giving us one full week and 1 day of the recital of the Slichot. So this is without question a time of the year that is one of greater intensity spiritually as we prepare for the coming days of awe. Well, I'm going to try to keep my eye on the chat window here as I return now to our studies. So I'd like now to go to our study of Daniel. And let us now turn, therefore, to where we left off in Daniel. Shalom, today, the 18th of Elul of the year 5776, corresponding to the 21st of September of the year 2016. And today we continue with our studies of Daniel. We are looking, as we have been, at the whole last section of the book. Chapters 10, 11, and 12 of Daniel are all part of one revelation to Daniel, of which we have already covered the first part. It is chapter 10 that sets the stage for the revelation. And chapter 11 and 12 are the substance of the revelation given to Daniel by the angel Gabriel, the man of the linen garments, about whom we hear of his very earth-shattering revelation to Daniel in chapter 10. And let me remind you of a point that I've made earlier, which is that in the original Hebrew parashiot, the portions of the text as it's written in the parchment, chapter 10 is all one parasha. It's all one section. There is then a break in the parasha at the beginning of chapter 11, going from verse 1 in chapter 11, and here the chapter divisions of our printed biblical text gets it all wrong, I'm afraid. Because our editions break at the end of chapter 11, verse 45, and then go into chapter 12, verse 1. But in the Hebrew handwritten manuscripts of Daniel on parchment, there is no break after verse 45 of chapter 11. The text continues for the first 3 verses of chapter 12, which are all part of this continuous revelation to Daniel by the emperor, by the angel Gabriel. And there is, of course, a change in subject somewhat from the end of chapter 11 to the end of chapter 12. The first 3 verses of chapter 12 go to the stage of redemption, as opposed to the whole of chapter 11, which essentially speaks about the steady intensification of the exile from the time of the Persian exile through that of the Greeks and the last exile, that of Edom, joined with Ishmael. So verse 12 changes from the theme of chapter 12, verse 1 is a slight shift in the theme from that of chapter 11, because from verse 1 in chapter 12 we hear about how the angel Michael at the end of days will come in to miraculously redeem Israel from this dire state of affairs. But the break in the Hebrew manuscripts only comes with verse 4 of chapter 12 at the end of all of this long revelation, and then from verses 4 through to the end of chapter 12 of Daniel, through the end of the book, that is the instructions of the angel to Daniel to seal up the end and add some additional teachings which we'll be coming to in due course. But for the moment, let us focus, before we come into a detailed study of the content of chapter 11, as promised, I would like to turn to the Holy Talmud, the Talmud in Tractate Yoma of the Babylonian Talmud, which has an extensive Agadah, a section of stories, as it were, which in the deep allegorical homiletical mode of the Talmud throw light on this interaction between Daniel and the angel. There are certain mysterious aspects of chapter 10, which are very beautifully explained by our Talmud. So let's just look at the Hebrew text of chapter 10 towards the end of the chapter. At the end of the bulk of the chapter deals with Daniel setting the scene for this revelation. As I've said, the main content of the revelation comes in chapters 11 and 12 of our editions, the prophecy about what the exile of the end of days will come, how things will be. So I have on your screen now chapter 10 from verse 20, which is when the angel actually begins to speak to Daniel. He has strengthened him after Daniel's being so shattered by this revelation of this exalted angel who has steadily come down from level to level to the guise of an ish, a person able almost to speak with Daniel on the same level. And in verse 20, the angel says to Daniel, he says, "Do you know why I've come to you? And now I shall go back to fight with the guardian angel of Persia." And the angel continues to say to Daniel in verse 20, "I am going out, and here the angel of Greece is coming. But I shall tell you that which is marked in the script of truth, and there's no one that is strengthening themselves with me against these other angels except for Michael, your guardian angel." And with that, the angel goes into the text in chapter 11. "Va'ani b'shnas achas l'Dario v'shamodi," I, in the first year of Darius the Mede, that is the king that conquered Babylon, Omdi lemachazik lemaoiz loy. I'm standing there to give strength and to give power to him. In other words, the angel Gabriel was coming in to put influence over the king of the Medes and later the Persians. And it's with this that he launches into his prophecy in chapter 11 about the whole extent of the exile. Well, now, in chapter 10, the angel had mentioned that he had actually been taken out of the heavenly court. And it is this that the Talmud discusses in the Agada in Yoma. Why was the angel Gabriel out of the heavenly tribunal, and how did he come to get back in? And all this relates to the subject of Yom Kippur, which is what the tractate of Yoma, the Day of Atonement, is all about, because on the Day of Atonement, all Israel are commanded to observe 5 forms of abstinence. We do not eat, we do not drink, we do not have intimate relations with our partners, we do not anoint ourselves, we do not wear shoes. We inflict upon ourselves all of these forms of abstinence and self-imposed suffering in order to rise beyond our bodily constraints on the Day of Atonement, for our souls to be able to connect with the Almighty through our repentance and our purity on this day. So one of the forms of abstinence is that of not anointing, which in ancient times particularly was very, very widespread throughout the better off classes, and indeed until today we know that many people are putting on their lotions and ointments and other forms of anointment. So since this is forbidden on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, the Talmud brings the story of Daniel in chapter 10 of Daniel, where he tells us that he had his 21 days according to the literal meaning of the verse, or 21 years according to Rashi, where day after day he would fast by day, breaking his fast only on a minimum of food at night. And he tells us that he did not anoint himself. And this is where the Talmud brings in our section of Daniel, and as is the way of the Talmud moves from subject to subject where there is some identity of theme or subject matter, and the Talmud goes in on Daf Ayin Vov of Masechet Yoma, tractate Yoma in the Babylonian Talmud, on the B side of the page, and it tells us that It turns us to take a look at Ezekiel chapter 8. Well, Ezekiel chapter 8 is writing about the prophecies of Ezekiel prior to the destruction of the first temple, prior to the destruction of King Solomon's temple. And the whole of the first 9 chapters of Ezekiel are all bound up with Ezekiel's having the vision of the chariot and then being taken to the city of Jerusalem in a kind of virtual prophetic trance, and there Ezekiel is shown what is actually going on inside the holy temple, where the wicked people of the generation in the years immediately prior to the destruction of the first temple were engaging in idolatry of the most disgusting kind, which was combined with a complete contempt for the holy temple itself. And the prophet Ezekiel is shown this terrible vision of what's going on in Jerusalem, and the Talmud picks up on this, and the Talmud starts quoting the verses from Ezekiel. The Talmud tells us that it says there in Ezekiel chapter 11, chapter 8, when Ezekiel is taken into the temple, he says there are 70 men of the elders of the house of Israel, and among them is standing Yaazniyahu ben Shaphan, Yaazniyahu the son of Shaphan, who was one of the leading figures of the generation. Here he is engaged in this idolatry, and the Talmud tells us that they were all of these elders had their censers of incense in each one in his hand, and a cloud of the smoke of the incense was rising up. And then the Almighty sends the appearance of a hand and takes Ezekiel by the locks of his head, by his hair, and lifts him up with a spirit between the earth and between the heavens, and he brings him to Jerusalem in the visions of God, to the entrance of the inner gate of the temple, which is turning to which is facing to the north. That is to say, he's at the northern gate of the temple courtyard, the main temple courtyard where the altar is situated, and there, he says, is the stand or the sitting place of the statue of jealousy. This is the statue of the idol which was put in the temple, which these people are worshipping within the holy temple of Hashem. They are actually worshipping this idol, and the prophet says, Ezekiel says, he brought me to the courtyard of the house of Hashem, the inner courtyard, and there at the entrance of the sanctuary of Hashem, between the vestibule, the ulam, and between the altar, the main temple altar, in the courtyard, there were some 25 men, and they had their behinds to the temple of Hashem. In this contemptuous, they were turned away from the main temple sanctuary with their faces facing the east. And they were prostrating to the east, to the sun. In other words, they had adopted the worship of the sun as their new idolatrous religion. And the Talmud asks why the text in Ezekiel has to repeat that. Why does it have to tell us that their behinds are to the temple if it tells us that their face is to the east? It's obvious if they're facing the east that their backs are going to be to the temple, which was in the west of the temple courtyard. And the Talmud deduces from this that they were actually bearing their behinds in the direction of the temple, and they were actually letting out gas and whatever else in the direction of the towards the opening of the temple in this highly contemptuous way. And it's at this point where the people are completely turned away from the true service of God to which Israel has been commanded. It's then that Ezekiel describes how God tells the angel Michael, the guardian angel of Israel. The Talmud here tells us that God says to Michael, Michael, your people have become corrupt. And Michael kind of half appeals to God. He says to them, Master of the universe, is it not sufficient that there are remaining those good people among them? And God replies to the angel Michael, I'm going to burn them up, and I'm going to burn the good people among them immediately. So severe is the decree. So severe is the anger aroused by this idol in the temple. And here the Talmud picks up the text of Ezekiel, and the text of Ezekiel says that the Almighty said to the man that is garbed in linen, this is the angel Gabriel, the same angel that is spoken about in Daniel, who was a younger contemporary of Ezekiel and who greatly outlived Ezekiel. It's one and the same Gabriel, the man of the linen garments. And God says to him, go in between the wheel under the cherub. This is talking about the charity that Ezekiel had seen, which has the angels who are drawing the chariot, and the angels themselves are on a level above what is called the ofan, the wheel, which signifies the galgal, which signifies the wheels of destiny, the wheels of divine government. And God is telling the angel to put his hand, to go in between the wheel under the cherub, and fill your fists, fill your hands with coals of fire from between the cherubs. Here the concept of fire is at a very severe divine judgment. And the angel Gabriel has been commanded to put his hand in and take the live burning coals of divine vengeance out from there, and to cast them, this says the text, cast them upon the city. And Ezekiel there describes how the angel in front of his eyes immediately came there, but it was the cherub, it was the upper angel, the cherub, that put his hand in between the cherubs to the fire that was between or among the cherubs, and he took out coals and he put them into the chofen, the hand of the angel Gabriel. And this is where Gabriel went wrong, because Gabriel had been commanded himself to take the coals, and he didn't. He let the angel take the coals and give them to him, and the effect that had was that the coals cooled down between the angel taking them from between the cherubs and between the angels giving them into the hand of the specific angel Gabriel. So here is so the text of Ezekiel says that the man garbed in the linen, when he received the coals in his hand, vayikach vayetze, he took it and he went out. What is the significance of this word, he went out? Here the Talmud interjects from quoting the verse in Ezekiel and brings in the following. He says, Amar Rav Chana bar Bizna, said Rav Chana, the son of Bizna, in the name of Rabbi Shimon the Chassid, if it were not that the coals had been cooled down from coming out of the hand of the cherub and going into the hand of Gabriel, had not the intensity of the divine fire and wrath and anger been reduced by this, there would not be left anything of all of the enemies of Israel, no survivor, no refugee. What the Talmud is saying here, it's calling actually Israel themselves by the term the enemies of Israel. That is to say that the Talmud does not want to say that Israel would have been destroyed, so it puts it onto the enemies. Had it not been for the cooling of the coals, the whole people could have been wiped out at that moment. So severe was the divine wrath at this specter of these people worshipping idols in God's holy temple. Had it not been for this, so in fact the angel Gabriel did good, because he engineered that the divine wrath would be somewhat mitigated, as represented by the cooling of the coals. So now the Talmud recounts continues with Ezekiel chapter 9. And it tells us that Ezekiel is watching now the coming destruction of Jerusalem. And in chapter 9, Ezekiel says, behold, the man that is garbed in the linen garments, who had the scribe's little portable desk on his loins. This is the ancient scribes who had to be ready in a moment in the royal court to note down the minutes or the divine decrees. He would have a little portable writing cabinet. He would probably inscribe it in wax with a stylus of some kind. And in the text of Ezekiel, these writing implements express how Gabriel is recording the divine decrees. So the text of Ezekiel says that at that moment the angel replies to the Almighty, "I've done what you commanded." In other words, here I took the coals and I'm about to cast them on the city. So the Talmud says, wait a second, this is not quite right here. Because as the Agadah, the tale continues, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, said Rabbi Yochanan, at that hour, that is when they took out Gabriel from within the pargod, within the veil that covers over the divine tribunal. That is when Gabriel was expelled from the divine tribunal, and says the Talmud continuing, at that moment they gave to the angel Gabriel 60 pulsa denura. Pulsa denura is quite a well-known Kabbalistic term here found in the Talmud. A pulsa is a blow or a swipe or a lash of nura, of fire. In other words, this was the punishment of Gabriel. They said to the angel Gabriel, if you didn't do what you were told to do, okay, you didn't do it. But if you say that you did it, why did you not do what exactly you were instructed to do? And more than that, if you say that you'd done it, you should not have misinformed us about what you did, because you did not do exactly what you were instructed to do. So now the Talmud continues, at this moment, that is when they brought in Dubiel. Dubiel, the Hebrew word dov, is a bear. And we've seen in earlier sections of Daniel that the Persian Empire is constantly expressed through the mashal, the metaphor of a bear with all of its fat and its coat of fur, and that is a symbol of Persia. And Dubiel is the name of the angel, the guardian angel of Persia. And it was when Gabriel was cast out of the divine tribunal, according to the Talmud, that was when the angel of Persia was admitted inside. And that is why in our chapter of Daniel, Gabriel describes to Daniel how Gabriel was now in this state of friction with the angel of Persia. And says the Talmud, it is the guardian angel of the Persians, Dubiel, that is standing in the gap created by the absence of Gabriel, and he served there for 21 days. These 21 days, the Talmud does not tell us if these are 21 literal days. These are obviously 21 heavenly days. How long exactly that is not really our issue here, but the verse in Daniel chapter 10 says, behold, Michael, the whole verse says, the angel of the kingdom of Persia is standing against me for 21 days, and behold, Michael, one of the first of the angels, the guardian angel of Israel, that is when Michael comes to help me, says Gabriel. And I was left there by the kings of Persia, and they gave to the kings of Persia 21 kingdoms and provinces with ports, and the angel of Persia is now trying to do a deal to take full advantage of his situation now in the divine tribunal. He's trying to do a deal with heaven to get the best deal he can for his people. He says, the angel of Persia now says before the heavenly tribunal, write down in my favor that Israel will have to pay taxes. And they wrote it down. They put that in the divine decree. So now the angel of Persia is emboldened, and he says, well, write down that the Rabbanim, the sages of Israel, will also have to pay the taxes. According to the law of the Torah, the true Torah scholar is exempt from taxation, but now the Persians really want to put a heavy weight of exile on Judah in exile under Persia, and they wrote this down. They gave over to the angel of Persia the authorization that the kings of Persia would rule even over the sages of Israel. And now, says the Talmud, at the moment when the heavenly tribunal wanted to seal the decree, the angel Gabriel stood up from outside of the veil covering over the inner proceedings of the heavenly tribunal. He's been pushed outside, but now the angel Gabriel raises his voices and he quotes the verse in Psalm 127. And he says, it is vanity and emptiness to you, those who rise up early and you sit late eating the bread of affliction. The psalm in Psalm 127 is despising the people who are so attached to the material world that they're from early morning to late at night working to by the sweat of their brow to gain whatever they can materially. And the verse continues there at the end of the verse, Ken yiten lidido sheno, so shall he give to his beloved in a state of sleep. That is, according to the literal meaning of the verse in the Psalms, to say that there's no need for people to toil endlessly for their livelihood, because those who really love God, God will grant them their livelihood easily, even while they're in a state of sleep. But the Gemara is going to darshan these few words of the verse in Psalm 127. The Gemara says, what exactly does this mean? So shall he give to Yedido Sheno. I just translated that phrase, Yedido. What shall he give to his beloved Sheno in a state of sleep? Said Rabbi Yitzchak, these are the wives of the Torah scholars, who drive sleep away from themselves in this world, because the Hebrew word in the Psalms, yedido, can be related homiletically to the Hebrew root nadad, which means to go into exile, to be driven away. And so the Gemara is here saying that what the angel Gabriel was doing in calling out this verse from the Psalms was he was calling on the heavenly tribunal to have mercy on Israel, not to give over the Torah scholars also under the power of the Persian Empire, because the wives of Israel have the merit that they drive sleep away from their eyes. They get up early in the morning to do everything they can to enable their husbands to study the Torah. And Rabbi Yitzchak says that this phrase in the Psalms is referring to the wives of the Torah scholars who drive sleep away from their eyes in this world, and they thereby become worthy of the reward in the world to come. So here Gabriel is trying to champion the Torah scholars of Israel, but nobody paid any attention to him from the heavenly tribunal. And here the Talmud now really says something quite amazing. So after this failed first effort to get the heavenly tribunal to have some pity on Israel, the angel Gabriel gets up and says before the Almighty, Master of the universe, if all of the wise men of the peoples of the world, the nations of the world, were on one side of the scales, and Daniel, the man of delights, Daniel ish chamudot, if he was on the other side of the scale, would he not actually outweigh all of them? Well, at that point, the Holy One, blessed be He, says, "Who is this who is arguing in favor of my children?" They said to him, "Master of the world, this is the angel Gabriel." God said to him, "Let him come in, let him come back into the inner tribunal. Let him come in because he is arguing in the merit of Israel." And that is the explanation of the verse in our chapter 10 of Daniel, which says, when the angel says to Daniel, "I have come on account of your words." What exactly is the meaning of this phrase that the angel Gabriel said to Daniel, "I've come according to your words"? That is because the merit of Daniel is alluded to there that enabled the angel Gabriel to come back in. So great was the sanctity and the piety of Daniel. So the Almighty said to the ministering angels, "Let him come in." They brought him in. He came and he found that Dubiel, the guardian angel of Persia, had taken the decree, the written decree in his hand that entrusted all of Israel and all of the Torah scholars into the hands of Dubiel and the kings of Persia. So now the angel Gabriel is back in, and this is now why the angel Gabriel is trying to save Israel from the machinations of Dubiel. And Gabriel, the angel Dubiel, tried to cast away from his hand the decree so that Gabriel would not be able to snatch it from him, but the angel Gabriel swallowed the decree. And some say, according to the Talmud, that the decree had been written but not yet sealed. Others say that it had already been sealed, but the angel Gabriel swallowed it with the seal so that it was not able to actually be enacted. The whole people of Israel were not put under the power of the kings of Persia. And when the angel Gabriel swallowed it, he blotted it out. And this, says the Talmud, this explains why in the Persian Empire there were some people who did pay taxes and other people that did not pay taxes. And the Gemara concludes this Agadah, this homiletical tale, by telling us the concluding words of the Talmud relate to what the angel Gabriel now says to Daniel. He says to him, "I am going out, and behold, the angel of Greece is coming. Woe, woe, because there's nobody that is paying attention now to his appeals." That is to say that the arrival of the angel of Greece, which signifies how the Greeks under Alexander conquered the Persia of Darius of Persia, the angel Gabriel was not able to prevent. This was a new intensification of the exile of Israel, because the exile of Israel under the Greeks was far harsher. The The Persians showed some beneficence to Israel, whereas the Greeks tried to blot out and nullify the whole Torah, the Shabbat, circumcision, the new moons, and to forcibly assimilate the Jews to Hellenism. And what we shall see in chapter 11 of Daniel through to the end of verse 3 of chapter 12 is the account that the angel Gabriel gave to Daniel of the coming exile. And with the help of God, in our next session, we shall enter into a detailed discussion of the content of chapter 11 and how it alludes to the exile of Israel under the empires of the Persians, the Greeks, and the Romans until our time. So we'll take a short break now, and right after that we will return with the help of God to our studies of the Holy Mishnah. Shalom. Today, the 18th day of the month of Elul of the year 5776, corresponding to the 21st of September of the year 2016. And we now continue with our study of Mishnah, Tractate Maccot, the tractate which deals with the subject of the penalty of 39 lashes administered by the Bet Din. And as discussed already in our introduction to the tractate and our discussion of the first Mishnah of chapter 1, the entire tractate, although called Maccot, referring to the lashes, the blows, does not speak about this subject throughout the tractate. In fact, we shall only come to address centrally the subject of Maccot, who are the transgressors that would be afflicted with the penalty of Maccot, the lashes. We shall only come to that in chapter 3. We do come into this subject in chapter 1 because in chapter 1 we are in a continuation of the tractate of Sanhedrin, and the central issue in chapter 1 is that of testimony in a Bet Din, testimony in a rabbinical court, the testimony of a dim of witnesses. And the TORAH for the decision about numerous matters which is going to be made by a court will rely upon testimony, Aidut. The whole of the Torah, the whole of Israel are all about testimony. When we recite Shema Yisrael, Hear, O Israel, Hashem, our God, Hashem is one. We are Aidim, we are witnesses. The capital, the third Hebrew letter of the word Shema, the ayin, is written large in the Torah scroll, larger than the other letters, and likewise the letter Dalet of Echad and ayin and Dalet, both of those two letters are written and enlarged in the verse of Shema Israel. They spell out the Hebrew word Ed, a witness. At Sinai, all Israel were witnesses to God's revelation. And there are times when people are not certain about a particular fact, about a particular issue, and will rely upon the testimony of witnesses. Now, the Torah itself specifically states that in a rabbinical case before the Sanhedrin, the testimony is going to have to be given by two valid witnesses. And we shall be looking in more detail about the way that testimony works in a rabbinical court later in our chapter 1. And we find in Deuteronomy chapter 17 that if a person had been heard to be serving idols, the man or the woman would have to be taken out to the Sanhedrin. And the Torah says in Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 6, according to the mouth of two witnesses or three witnesses shall the dead person be executed. He shall not be put to death by the mouth of one witness. Here we have the basic Torah law that in all capital cases it is the testimony of two witnesses. If their testimony is not controverted and they were not proven to have been elsewhere at the time they claim to have witnessed the event, if all of this is the case, then it is the testimony of two witnesses that determines how the case will be judged. Now, there are instances where the testimony of one witness is sufficient. This is not addressed in our tractate. There are a variety of areas where the testimony of one witness can influence the case. A woman that had been in a faraway place with her husband, and she comes back and she says, well, her husband has died, and she wants authorization from the Bet Din to marry somebody else. The laws of testimony in her case are greatly alleviated. She requires only one witness to testify that what she says is correct, to report that her husband has died, and she may be she will then be permitted to marry somebody else. Another case where the testimony of one witness is sufficient is where we need a determination if a particular item was or was not kosher. Let us say that there was something that looks like animal fat that could be of the permitted fats for consumption of the animal, or it could be of the particularly hard fats in certain parts of the body that in Hebrew are called chelev, the consumption of which by an Israelite is considered a transgression, punishable by the heavenly penalty of karet, the excision of that soul. And if a person was witnessed to have eaten chelev fat, then two witnesses could bring them to Bet Din and have that person given the lashes to take off from them the heavenly penalty of karet. Well, now, two witnesses would have to witness the person eating the fat, but it would be sufficient if only one witness knew that this was the forbidden chelev fat, that his testimony alone on the halachic status of the fat itself would be sufficient to have the person get lashes if he had been witnessed eating this substance by two witnesses. In other words, here again is a case where we rely upon the testimony of one witness. where there was only one witness to a financial transaction, such as a loan, or some other financial matter, the testimony of one witness is not sufficient to swing the case against the person against whom he's witnessing, but it can require that other person to be required to take a solemn oath that the facts are as he says it was, as opposed to the way the witness is saying it was. So there are cases in the Bet Din where the testimony of one witness is sufficient. But in our chapter, we are concerned with the case of Edim Zomemim. The Hebrew word zomem is a verb from the Hebrew word zimah, which means counsel, some plan, could be in our case of the Edim Zomemim. These are treacherous people who are plotting against the person that they are going to give false testimony to the Bet Din. Now, the Torah itself has the general prohibition against giving false testimony, which is in the Ten Commandments. Loisane v'reacho eid sheker. You shall not answer against your fellow as a false witness. It's forbidden to give false testimony in the court against your fellow Israelite. And if a person does so, then in most cases, if the testimony was false, when the witness is exposed as a false witness, he will be subject to the penalty of lashes, the 39 lashes. Now, Edim Zomemim are false witnesses, but the law of the Edim Zomemim, of the false witnesses that we are talking about, is where they are trying to cause the person against whom they are testifying to suffer in some way as a result of their testimony. And the Torah tells us in the portion of the Edim Zomemim, this is contained in Deuteronomy chapter 19 from verses 15 on. The Torah tells us that there shall not stand up one single witness against a person for any transgression that he may transgress. Once again, the Torah tells us in Deuteronomy chapter 19 verse 16 that according to the mouth of two witnesses or three witnesses shall something endure. We shall be discussing later on what three witnesses may add to what two witnesses have to say. We shall be discussing the various conditions in which three witnesses may have a voice. Essentially, any matter is determined by two valid witnesses. If you add witnesses, it may make the evidence look more impressive, but it does not halachically change the status of the evidence, except in certain respects in the way that the witnesses might be disproved. We shall come to that later on in our study of chapter 1 of Maccot. But the Torah continues in Deuteronomy chapter 19, when a wicked witness rises up against a person to accuse him of something going astray, then the two disputants will be standing there before the judges, before the priests and the judges must investigate the whole issue. And if they discover that the witness was a false witness, that he spoke falsely against his brother, the Torah says, you shall do to him as he plotted to do to his brother. Ka'asher zomam la'asois le'ochiv, as he plotted to do against his brother. So the law of the Ed Zomem is that there are cases where he suffers what he intended to bring upon his brother. And as we shall see in our Mishnah now in chapter 1 of Maccot, the second Mishnah which we now come to, we shall see various ways in which this plays out. We had studied in the first Mishnah cases where you cannot do to the Eid Zomem what he wanted to do to his fellow. Just to recapitulate from the first Mishnah of Maccot, when would the law of Edim Zomemim be applied? if the false witnesses gave false testimony against a Kohen priest that he was not fit to be a priest because his mother had been divorced before she had him, or she'd undergone the levirate marriage. In those cases, you don't say, well, let's make the false witnesses into disqualified priests, because you can't do that, because even if they were priests in the first place, if you may punish them, but as disqualified priests, all of their children and progeny are also disqualified, and that would not be commensurate with what they tried to do to the object of their plot, because they were only plotting against him, not against his seed. So you cannot punish the seed of the Edim Zomamim for something that was committed by their ancestors. And so in this case, said the first Mishnah, the Edim Zomamim, the false witnesses, would have the penalty of lashes. Since you cannot apply what the Torah says about their having to have the same done to them as they wanted to do to the person they testified against, since you cannot do that, in this case, the standard punishment for false testimony of the Ten Commandments, do not give false testimony against your fellow, this is applied the penalty of the lashes. So now we come to in the second Mishnah of Maccot, chapter 1. We testify against Mr. So-and-so, a certain man, that he owes his fellow 200 zuz. A nice quantity of money, probably enough to finance somebody for a year. They turned out to be plotting to be treacherous witnesses because he never owed him that money at all. How are we going to punish them? Loikin, they receive the lashes, says Rabbi Meir. Loikin umeshalamin, they have received the lashes, but they also have to pay. This is the opinion of Rabbi Meir, as we shall presently see in the Mishnah. They have to suffer the lashes and they have to pay both. According to Rabbi Meir, they receive the lashes for giving false testimony, and they have to pay the 200 that they said the other guy owed his friend when he didn't. And Rabbi Meir explains, Shaloi Hashem hamevi'oi lidei makos, not the name that brings him to the hands of lashes. Mevi'o lidei tashlumin, brings him to the hand of repayments. The name here, Hashem, this is the name that is written in the Torah. All of the Torah is made up of God's names. All the verses and words of the Torah are all names of God. And there is a verse in the Ten Commandments in Exodus and Leviticus that says, do not bear false testimony. This is called a name. We would say it's not the commandment that the prohibition that brings this person to get lashes, the prohibition against false testimony, that's not the same as what the Torah says in Deuteronomy about the Eid Zomim, that he has to suffer what he intended to make the other person suffer. It's not the same thing that brings him lidei tashlumin, to repayment, because that's a different mitzvah. There's a mitzvah, don't bear false testimony, and there's a mitzvah, what to do to the Eidim Zomim, to the false witnesses. Divrei Rabbi Meir, these above are the words of Rabbi Meir, who holds that both penalties are applicable. They get lashes and they have to pay. The Chachamim Omrim, but the other sages say, and this is the accepted opinion, Kol amashalim eno loike, everybody who is paying compensation, eno loike, does not suffer the lashes. That is the accepted halacha. So Rabbi Meir is more severe, putting two punishments on the false witness, and the other sages are more lenient. Once the person pays out the money, he gets saved from the very terrible penalty of lashes. Mishnah Gimel, the third Mishnah of Maccot, chapter 1. Me'idin onu v'ish peloini shehu chayav malkus arboim. We testify against Mr. So-and-so, a certain individual, that he is liable to receive the penalty of Malkut, the lashes of Arboim, the 40 lashes, which are actually 39, they have testified that the person either flagrantly wore a mixture of linen and wool in their clothes, or they ate or they cooked meat and milk together. The person performed some act that makes him liable when he's duly warned to the 40 lashes. They're testifying against him. They are found out to be treacherous, false witnesses. Leikin Shmoinim, they are going to have a total of 80 lashes. In other words, twice over 39, 78 lashes. This is now the first opinion, the opinion of Rabbi Meir. They're going to get 2 sets of lashes. Mishum loy sanev reacho eit shakir. On account, first of all, of the commandment in the 10 Commandments, you shall not answer against your neighbor as a false witness. Exodus chapter 20. Likewise, a second set of lashes, you shall do to him what he plotted against his friend, the explicit words of Deuteronomy chapter 19. Divrei Rabbi Meir, that is the opinion of Rabbi Meir. The other sages say, Einon loikin el arboim. This set of false witnesses will only suffer 40 lashes. It will only be afflicted with 1 set of lashes, not 2. And that is the accepted opinion. The Hebrew word meshalshin is from the root shlosha, meaning 3. Here the word means you divide up the money. Meshalshin b'mamon. We will divide the monetary payments which will have to be repaid by each of the false witnesses. Ve'ein meshalshin b'makois. We do not, however, divide up the lashes. Each one of them is going to get the full set of 39 lashes. Ketzad, the Mishnah explains. If they gave testimony against him that he is liable to his friend 200 zuz, they were found out to be false witnesses. Mishalshin beinehem, we're going to divide it up between them. If there were a set of 2 witnesses, they'd each have to pay 100 zuz. If there were 3, each would have to pay 66 1/3 zuz, and so on. But if they testified against him that he's liable to the penalty of 40 lashes, they were found out to be false witnesses. Each and every one of the witnesses will get the full set of 40 lashes that are really 39. Well, now in the next Mishnah, we're going into the laws of testimony and how do you prove Eidim Zomamin to be such? Let us understand here that one way that you can disprove the testimony of a witness is if the thing that he says is demonstrably proven to be false. But by demonstrably disproving the testimony of the Eidim Zomamim, that is not going to nail them as Eidim Zomamim. What nails them as Eidim Zomamim, if we prove that they could not possibly have been witnesses to what they say they saw because they were somewhere else at the time. And this is what our Mishnah now goes on to discuss. Mishnah 4 of Maccot chapter 1. Ein ho'edim nasim zomamin. The witnesses do not become in the category of Eidim Zomamin to have all of the punishments visited upon them when it is proven, ad she yozoimu es atzmon, until they will incriminate themselves. That is to say, they will incriminate their bodies. Their bodies were not present where they said they were. It's not the testimony that is found out to be a matter of perjury. It is they incriminate themselves by their physical presence, as the Mishnah now goes on to explain. Ketzad. Omru me'idin onu ve'ish peloini shehorag es hanefesh. If they were to say, we testify against a certain man that he killed a nefesh, he killed a soul, a person. Amru lohen he'ach atem me'idim. When the judges ask them, the judges are investigating this testimony and subjecting them to interrogation, they say to them, how is it that you are testifying? What is the basis of your testimony? Sheharei neherog zeh. Well, if they answer, well, look, that individual got killed. Or if they were to say, look, the alleged killer was with us on that day in a certain place. Ein elu zomemen. These are not in the category of the treacherous witnesses. They may be false witnesses, but this is not what incriminates them as Edim Zomamin, upon whom we will visit the very penalty they were trying to visit on this man accused of murder. The above, where they say, look, the circumstances of the act were such and such, and we were there, that is not what incriminates them. But if the rabbinical court said to them, how is it that you are testifying? Look, you were with us on that very day in a certain place. In this case, the witnesses are proven to be false witnesses. What is happening here is that two witnesses have stepped forward in the court and said, look, that man committed a murder. If other witnesses came and said it could not be because the person, the alleged killer, was with us that day, that does not rule these two as Edim Zomamin. In our case, when they say to them, when another set of witnesses gets up and says to these two witnesses, how come how could you possibly give this testimony? Shehare atem ayisem imonu oiso hayom b'mokem ploni. You were with us that day someplace else, in some other place. How can you possibly testify that you witnessed Mr. X kill Y in Paris when you were with us in Berlin that day, and there was no way you could travel from Berlin to Paris to witness that? It's in the latter case that the false witnesses are proven to be false. When two other witnesses come and say, look, your bodies were not present at the place where you say you were to witness this act because you were elsewhere. And the two Edim Zomamin are, and all of the Edim Zomamin, however many they were, 2, 3, or 4, or as many as they were, they're all going to be executed according to the testimony of this new set of witness who steps up against them and says, look, you couldn't have seen it because you were with us that day at that time. You were in a different place. So this is the essence of the determination of who comes under the category of the Edim Zomem, that is the plural of the expression Ed Zomem, which is the singular, a treacherous witnesses. So what we have just seen now is that there's the testimony of the two witnesses who claim to have seen somebody kill somebody else. And then they step forward before the court, another different two witnesses, who say to the first two witnesses, how could you possibly testify what you said in truth because you were elsewhere with us on that day at that time? So you've got two sets of witnesses. Well, who are you going to believe? According to the Torah in Deuteronomy 19, it is the second set of witnesses that you believe if they testify that the first set were not where they said they were. So the Torah, intrinsically, if there was no second set of witnesses, nobody to controvert the first set of witnesses, we would rule the case according to them. And there's a law of the Torah that if a second set came forward to controvert their evidence, we're going to depend upon the evidence of the second set. And this leads us to our next Mishnah, which now carries that discussion further. This could go on and on in the court. Bo achirim vehezimum. If other witnesses came and they proved the second set of witnesses to be false witnesses, how could you say that those witnesses were with you in Berlin when they were with us in Paris? We've got a new set of witnesses stepping forward. And then another set comes forward and controverts the evidence of the third set of witnesses. Afilu mea, even if it's 100, kulam yehoregu, they're all going to be subject to the death penalty. We have a very complex situation here in the court where the words of our Mishnah could be understood in a couple of ways. How could this lead to 100 executions of false witnesses? Let's say that a first set of witnesses accused the man of murder, and the second set of witnesses said you couldn't have seen him, you weren't there. So he's knocked out those first two. The second group of witnesses knocked out the first group. Then a new set of witnesses comes forth and say, no, we did see him kill the man. And the same second set of witnesses, no, you were not there either, you were with us. A third group steps forward, we saw him kill the man. This second set of witnesses, no, you were with us. And they keep on knocking down all of these witnesses who are trying to nail the accused man. And you've got potentially 100 of people have been accused of false testimony by this one set of two witnesses, the second group of witnesses. So the opinion of the first Tana in our Mishnah is that indeed you might get up to 100 deaths in such a case. Rabbi Judah says that is not the case. Istotis hizoi. That is istotis. The precise meaning of the Hebrew word istotis is subject to the commentary of Rabbi Ovadia of Bartenura here. That is to say, it is this second group of witnesses that keep on disqualifying all the other sets. They are really perverse because they have formed this plot between the two of them just to disqualify anybody who comes to testify in the case of this alleged murder. That's the first explanation of Bartenura of the meaning of this Hebrew word istotis, which is quite an unusual word. And then another explanation says Bartenura that this second set of witnesses who keep on disqualifying all the others as if they are putting a blue ink on every single set of witnesses that steps forward to testify against the accused. They keep on disqualifying each of them. There is in Hebrew the name of a blue dye called isotis. Isotis might be translated into English as the very old word woad, which is a plant-derived ink, which probably has the same staining effect as contemporary tattoo inks have on, which are now all the rage all over the insane world. So Rabbi Yehuda is saying this is really excessive, what the first opinion of the Mishnah is saying, that you might let one set of witnesses disqualify many sets of other witnesses. Rabbi Yehuda says this is really excessive, but the actual halacha is that it could be that one set of witnesses would actually disqualify many other sets of witnesses. And with this, we conclude today's Mishnah study. With the help of the Almighty, I hope to be here tomorrow at the same time, in the same place, and I hope you'll be able to join me to continue with our studies. Shalom for today from Yerushalayim. I hope we will be able to get to more Hasidic inspiration in our coming classes. So bless you, my friends. Have a wonderful day, wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, wherever you are.
God.